The spaceship crashed into the barren wasteland with a deafening roar. The impact was fierce, throwing debris across the rocky surface. The ship's hull was shredded, twisted metal scattering like confetti in the dry air. Through the smoke and dust, one figure emerged, a young woman, her skin covered in bright red and black markings, resembling the fiercest of predators. Her sharp claws scraped against the metal as she dragged herself out of the wreckage, eyes glowing with fury. She had survived, but at what cost? Her arm was broken, her leg badly wounded, and she was alone. The alien girl hissed as she struggled to stand, her mind a swirl of confusion and pain. In the distance, a human soldier approached cautiously, his boots crunching on the gravel. His eyes narrowed as he saw the girl, her appearance unlike anything he had ever encountered before. His mission was clear: to assess and neutralize threats. But as he looked into her fierce eyes, he hesitated. The girl's snarls filled the air, but the soldier did not retreat. He had seen things in the war that made him question everything he knew. And now, facing this creature, he felt something different. He felt a pull, a strange urge to help her, even as she clawed at the air in frustration. The soldier's hand moved toward the first aid kit strapped to his waist. But the alien girl wasn't going to make it easy. She lunged at him with a growl, her claws aimed at his throat. Without hesitation, he raised his arms to shield himself, feeling the impact of her strikes. The force was intense, but she was not trying to kill him. She was scared. Her movements were wild, uncontrolled, fueled by fear rather than malice. He knew he had to act quickly before she injured herself further. In one swift motion, he grabbed her arm and pulled her down to the ground, pinning her against the rocky surface. Her hissing subsided as she realized she wasn't being attacked, she was being restrained. But gently, he could feel her heart pounding beneath his hands, and he didn't let go. There was something in the way she calmed under his touch that made him realize she wasn't just a monster. She was hurt, and like anyone in pain, she needed help. The human soldier took a deep breath and spoke softly, trying to calm her. "I'm not your enemy," he said, his voice steady, but his heart racing. The alien girl stared up at him, her expression still full of anger, but something in her eyes softened. She wasn't ready to trust him, but she wasn't attacking him either. That was a start. The soldier reached into his bag and carefully pulled out the medical supplies, hoping she would allow him to treat her wounds. The girl recoiled when he first touched her arm, but then, surprisingly, she stilled. He applied the bandages as gently as he could, his movements slow and deliberate. Her sharp gaze never left him, watching every motion with suspicion. She could have attacked him at any moment, yet she didn't. Instead, she hissed softly, her body tense but no longer lashing out. The soldier worked in silence, feeling the weight of her gaze, understanding that he was treading on dangerous ground. But he couldn't let her suffer. He had to finish what he started, even if it meant risking his life. As the final bandage was applied, the soldier slowly backed away. He took a deep breath, watching her carefully. The alien girl, once a furious beast, now seemed more fragile than he had imagined. Her glowing eyes flickered with something more vulnerable, curiosity perhaps. She didn't understand him, didn't trust him, but for the first time, she wasn't attacking. The soldier smiled gently, his fingers still tingling from the brief contact. She hadn't killed him. She hadn't even tried to escape. There was something about this alien, something beyond her terrifying appearance, that called to him. He didn't know what it was, but he knew this wasn't the end of their story. The alien girl's body still trembled slightly, but her movements were slower, calmer. She had been through so much. The soldier could see that now, more clearly than before. She was no monster. She was a survivor, just like him. Her hissing had softened to a low growl, but she wasn't lashing out anymore. Her breathing had slowed, and her eyes met his without the same intensity. There was still wariness in them, But something else had begun to emerge. A glimmer of hope, perhaps. Maybe, just maybe, they could survive this strange encounter together. The morning light filtered through the dusty atmosphere as the soldier stood up, his eyes scanning the horizon. He could feel the alien girl's presence behind him, her sharp gaze never leaving him. She had stopped fighting, but she had not shown any signs of gratitude. He couldn't blame her. She was a stranger in a strange land, and for all she knew, he could be just another enemy. Still, the soldier could not ignore the strange bond that had started to form between them. He glanced back at her, wondering what to do next. The alien girl was sitting against a pile of rocks, her tail twitching slightly as she observed her surroundings. Her breathing was more controlled now, her claws no longer raised in threat. She seemed to be waiting, perhaps for something, or someone. The soldier took a step closer, but she immediately tensed, her eyes narrowing. He had learned quickly that she wasn't one to be approached carelessly. He stopped in his tracks, offering her a soft nod to show he meant no harm. Slowly she relaxed, though her suspicion remained. He could feel her wariness in the air, thick and palpable. It was clear. She had been through things no one should have to endure. With a deep sigh, the soldier began to walk toward the wreckage of her ship. It was only a few meters away, but he had to be careful. The ship had crashed in a violent explosion, and there were signs that the area was still unstable. He didn't know much about alien technology, but he knew enough to avoid triggering something that could make things worse. As he approached the wreck, he heard the girl stir behind him. He didn't turn, but he knew she was watching him, her eyes burning with curiosity now rather than hostility. Maybe it was the healing he had given her that had softened her, or maybe it was simply the silence that came with being stranded on this alien world. When the soldier reached the remains of the ship, he found what he was looking for: a few pieces of equipment, mostly tools and supplies. He didn't know what she would need, but he hoped something could help them both survive. He packed up the supplies carefully, all the while aware of her presence behind him. She had not moved, but her sharp eyes followed his every movement. He sensed that she was waiting for him to make the next move. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of life she had lived before all this. What kind of world had she come from? What was her mission? There were so many unanswered questions, but he had no answers to give. Turning back toward her, the soldier walked slowly, carefully choosing each step. He wasn't sure if she would allow him to approach, but he had learned enough to know that patience was key. As he neared her, she did not lash out, but she was still on edge. Her eyes never left his, and he could see the flicker of intelligence behind them. She was more than just an animal, more than just a creature to be feared. She was intelligent, calculating, and dangerous, but she was also in pain physically and emotionally. The soldier knew that much. It wasn't just her injuries that made her seem fragile. It was the way she carried herself, the way she had been abandoned to fend for herself. The soldier sat down a few feet away from her, watching her carefully. He didn't want to push her too hard, but he couldn't help feeling a sense of responsibility toward her. She was alone, stranded, and he had no idea how to get her back to her people, or if that was even possible. But he couldn't just leave her here. Something inside him refused to walk away. Maybe it was his training, or maybe it was just something deeper, but he felt an undeniable need to protect her, to help her. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something more, something that felt like destiny. And despite everything, he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths had crossed for a reason. The alien girl's posture remained tense, but there was something in her expression now that was different. Her gaze, once filled with suspicion, now carried a mix of wariness and something else, maybe even acceptance. She didn't fully trust him, but she didn't see him as an enemy either. That small shift in her behavior gave the soldier hope. It meant that perhaps, just perhaps, they could work together to survive this. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small ration, offering it to her. She hesitated for a moment before taking it, her sharp claws carefully picking it up. "The Fundin." Soldier smiled slightly, grateful for the small sign of progress. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As the day wore on, the soldier and the alien girl remained together, both silent, but not in an uncomfortable way. He had learned that silence was something they both needed, an unspoken understanding between them. She wasn't ready to speak yet, and he didn't push her to. Instead, they sat together, watching the sun begin to set, its orange light painting the sky in brilliant hues. The soldier took a deep breath, the air thick with the weight of their situation. They were both stranded in this alien world, and they had no idea what the future held. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. The girl had stopped, hissing and clawing. She was still dangerous, but she was also learning to trust him. They were not enemies, at least not anymore. And that, in itself, was a victory. The soldier and the alien girl traveled through the rocky terrain, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the silence. The girl was more composed now, her movements slower, but not as aggressive as before. She was still wary of him, but the constant tension in her posture had faded somewhat. The soldier noticed this, but he knew not to push her too far. Every step they took together seemed like a small victory. They were surviving, and for now, that was enough. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the landscape. The air was dry and thin, making it hard to breathe at times. The soldier had to keep his pace steady, watching the alien girl as she stumbled slightly. Her injuries were still evident, and he knew that she was pushing herself too hard. He couldn't allow her to break down. She had to heal if they were going to survive. Without saying a word, he reached into his pack and pulled out another medical kit. The alien girl eyed him cautiously, but she didn't move away. She had learned by now that his touch didn't mean harm. He approached her slowly, making sure to give her space. She flinched slightly when his fingers brushed against her skin, but this time she didn't strike. The soldier took his time, applying the bandages to her injuries, working carefully around the alien markings that covered her body. She didn't make a sound, her sharp eyes still locked onto his every move. It wasn't easy for her to let someone else help, but it seemed as if she was beginning to trust him, if only a little. The soldier's movements were slow and precise, aware that any sudden movement might trigger her wariness. When he finished, the soldier stepped back and watched her for a moment. She didn't look at him directly, but he could see the faint relaxation in her body language. The tension had eased from her shoulders. It was a subtle change, but one that he noticed. He smiled softly, unsure of what to say. The silence stretched on between them. Words felt unnecessary now. The alien girl wasn't looking for comfort, but she was no longer trying to kill him either. That was progress. She seemed to accept the quiet companionship, as if it was enough for the moment. The journey continued in this way for hours, each of them silently moving through the harsh landscape. The soldier didn't mind the quiet, though he occasionally glanced at the girl, wondering what she was thinking. He knew that her kind was fierce, but he also knew that beneath that exterior, there was something more. She was just like him in many ways, driven by survival, by the need to keep moving forward. They both carried scars, though hers were more visible. The soldier had his own invisible wounds, ones that ran deep, but for now, they shared the struggle of survival. As they moved through the barren wasteland, the soldier felt a sense of unease grow in the pit of his stomach. The air felt thicker, more oppressive. He could feel something shifting in the atmosphere, something he couldn't quite place. The girl had stopped in her tracks, her ears twitching slightly. She was listening, her eyes scanning the horizon. He felt the change too, and he tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at his side. Something was coming, and he wasn't sure if it was friend or foe. The alien girl's body stiffened, her claws slowly extending as she stood at attention. Her tail flicked nervously behind her, and the soldier could see the wariness return into her eyes. Whatever was out there, she sensed it first. The soldier didn't know what to expect, but he trusted her instincts. He crouched low, keeping his movements quiet. The sound of distant footsteps reached his ears, and his heart began to race. He had to be ready. The girl's eyes never left the distance, her posture low, her focus unbroken. There was no turning back now. They would face whatever came next together. The tension in the air thickened, as if the entire landscape was holding its breath. Soldier's hand gripped the hilt of his weapon tightly, but he didn't pull it out just yet. He needed to stay calm, to think clearly. The alien girl's body remained perfectly still, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon with laser-like precision. She had the advantage in this terrain, and for once, the soldier was grateful for it. He wasn't sure what they were up against, but he knew he couldn't afford to be careless. He had to rely on her now. The sound of footsteps grew louder, closer. The soldier's grip on his weapon tightened, but he didn't draw it. He didn't want to escalate the situation without knowing what they were facing. He looked back at the girl, and for the first time, their eyes met. There was no hostility in her gaze anymore, only determination. It was as if she was telling him, without words, that they would survive this together. The soldier nodded slightly, and they both braced themselves for whatever came next. The waiting was the hardest part, but he knew it wouldn't last much longer. They were about to face their next challenge, asterisk. The sound of footsteps grew closer, and the soldier's instincts kicked in. He crouched lower, making sure to stay hidden behind a pile of rocks. His grip tightened on his weapon as he peered through the crack in the rocks, trying to make out the shapes in the distance. The alien girl beside him was perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The silence between them was thick, but there was an understanding. She was ready, as was he. They both knew the stakes. As the footsteps drew nearer, the soldier could see figures moving through the dust. They weren't human. The figures were tall, covered in rough, armored clothing, their faces obscured by helmets. The soldier recognized them instantly. They were a group of mercenaries, the kind who would do anything for a paycheck. He felt a chill run down his spine. They were not here to help. They were here to hunt, and they wouldn't care who they took down. He glanced at the alien girl, her eyes glowing faintly in the low light. She seemed ready to fight, but she wasn't charging in yet. She was waiting. The soldier exhaled slowly, weighing his options. He had a weapon, but it was no match for the mercenaries' heavy firepower. His best chance was to remain unseen, to wait for the right moment. The alien girl seemed to sense the same thing. She moved closer to him, her tail flicking with nervous energy. Despite her earlier trust, the tension in her body told him everything. She was still wary of the humans, but now wasn't the time for hesitation. He knew they had to work together if they wanted to survive this. The mercenaries were getting closer, and the soldier could hear the conversation among them. They were speaking in a low, guttural language he couldn't understand, but he didn't need to. The tone was unmistakable. They were on a mission, a hunt. He could see their eyes, scanning the area, looking for anything out of place. The soldier held his breath, hoping they wouldn't notice him. His heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his movements slow, deliberate. The alien girl, too, had lowered her body, her claws twitching, ready to strike if needed. The leader of the mercenaries stepped forward, his armor reflecting the dim light of the setting sun. The soldier could see the tattooed markings on his arms, a sign of the mercenaries' rank. He was searching the area with precision, his eyes scanning every crevice. The soldier knew they couldn't stay hidden for much longer. The mercenaries were closing in. His eyes flicked to the alien girl, who seemed to be waiting for a signal, for the right moment. He wasn't sure what her plan was, but he trusted her instincts. She was a predator after all, and she would know what to do. The leader of the mercenaries took another step forward, and for a moment, The soldier thought he had been spotted. The air seemed to freeze. His heart raced. The alien girl's eyes widened slightly, and then, without warning, she moved. In one fluid motion, she lunged at the mercenary closest to her. Her claws ripped through the air with terrifying speed. The soldier's instincts kicked in, and he reacted just as quickly. He pulled his weapon and aimed at the nearest mercenary. The sudden chaos shattered the stillness. A shot rang out, and the alien girl's roar filled the air as she tore into the mercenaries with a brutal force. It was a fight for survival, and neither of them would hold back. The mercenaries didn't hesitate either. They raised their weapons and fired, but the alien girl was too fast, too agile. She dodged their shots with ease, her movements like a blur. The soldier fired as well, hitting one of the mercenaries in the shoulder. The force of the impact sent the man stumbling back, but he quickly regained his balance. The soldier's breath came in short bursts as he aimed again, this time hitting another mercenary in the leg. The sound of gunfire echoed across the wasteland. The fight had begun, and it was clear that they were outnumbered, but they had one advantage: their teamwork. The soldier and the alien girl worked in perfect unison, their movements coordinated. She attacked from one side while he provided cover from the other. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. The mercenaries were skilled, but they were not prepared for the alien girl's speed and ferocity. One by one, they fell, unable to keep up with the onslaught. The soldier kept his focus, his eyes constantly scanning for new targets, making sure to cover their backs. The alien girl was relentless, her claws cutting through the air with deadly precision. She was no longer just defending herself, she was fighting to protect them both. The soldier felt a rush of adrenaline as he continued to fire, each shot calculated, each movement deliberate. This was a fight they couldn't afford to lose. As the last mercenary fell to the ground, the soldier exhaled slowly, his breath coming in heavy gasps. The battlefield was silent once more. The alien girl stood among the fallen bodies, her chest heaving with exertion, her eyes still glowing with the thrill of the fight. The soldier lowered his weapon and glanced at her. For the first time since they had met, he saw something resembling respect in her gaze. She had fought alongside him, and they had won. They had survived together. The soldier stood still, his breathing heavy but steady. The battlefield around them was quiet now, the distant winds blowing dust across the rocky landscape. The alien girl, still panting from the fight, stood over the fallen mercenaries, her eyes scanning for any signs of movement. Her claws were still extended, her muscles tense and ready for another threat, but the fight was over. She had proven herself, and so had he. Together, they had won, and the soldier couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. He looked around at the fallen mercenaries. They had been ruthless, but now they lay in defeat. The soldier knew that these men were dangerous, but they were nothing compared to the alien girl. She was a force of nature, something wild and untamed. He had seen her power firsthand, and in that moment, he realized just how small he had once felt in comparison. He wasn't sure what to make of the situation, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't have survived without her. She had saved his life as much as he had saved hers. The soldier slowly lowered his weapon, his eyes still locked on the alien girl. She hadn't moved yet, but he could feel the weight of the moment between them. They were standing side by side. Two beings from completely different worlds, yet somehow bound together in this strange, hostile environment. The silence that followed the battle was deafening. There was no need for words. They had spoken with their actions, and that was enough. The soldier could feel her watching him, but he didn't know what to say. His mind was still reeling from the intensity of the fight. Finally, the alien girl took a step toward him. Her movements were slow and deliberate, her claws retracting as she closed the distance between them. The soldier's eyes widened slightly, unsure of what she was planning. But instead of attacking, she stopped just in front of him. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, everything else faded away. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence spoke volumes. They were no longer enemies. They were allies. She had proven her worth, and so had he. The soldier exhaled slowly, his hand moving to his side to check his equipment. He was alive, and so was she. It was a strange feeling, knowing that they had survived together. It wasn't just about surviving the fight. It was about the bond that had formed between them, a bond born out of necessity, but now something more. The alien girl, once a fierce enemy in his eyes, was now someone he trusted. He wasn't sure how or why it had happened, but it had. And in this world, trust was a rare and precious thing. The wind picked up again, howling through the desolate landscape. The soldier adjusted his pack, preparing for whatever came next. He had no idea what the future held, but he knew he couldn't do it alone, not anymore. The alien girl was by his side, and as much as she had shown her power and strength, she had also shown a vulnerability he hadn't expected. They were both survivors, and they both knew that survival was all that mattered. Now the girl, however, had her own thoughts. She didn't trust humans entirely, but there was something about the soldier that made her hesitate. She had expected him to be just another threat to eliminate. But he had fought beside her, not against her. She had seen the determination in his eyes, the same fire that burned in her own heart. She didn't know what it meant, but she couldn't ignore it. He was different from the others. Maybe there was more to him than just the soldier he appeared to be. She glanced at him once more before turning her attention back to the horizon. She knew they couldn't stay here for long. The mercenaries were just the beginning. There were more dangers in this world, and they would have to face them together. The alien girl wasn't sure if she could ever fully trust a human, but she knew that for now, they needed each other. That was the only truth she could rely on in this strange, hostile place. The soldier, too, looked out into the distance. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for sure: they were no longer alone. Together, they were stronger. And as long as they stood side by side, they could face whatever came their way. They had proven that today. The alien girl had shown him her strength, and he had shown her his. Their bond had been forged in the fires of battle, and now they had to see where it would take them. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were fighting for something more. The alien girl turned away from the battlefield, her eyes scanning the landscape for any signs of movement. The soldier followed her, silently agreeing that they couldn't stay in one place for too long. They would move forward, together, facing whatever challenges awaited them. They had come this far, and they weren't going to stop now. It wasn't just about survival, it was about the journey they would share, the trust they would build, and the fight they would continue to wage against the odds. Their story was just beginning. Asterisk. The landscape ahead of them stretched for miles, the dust swirling in the air as the wind picked up. The soldier kept his pace steady, moving carefully but purposefully, with the alien girl by his side. Despite everything that had happened, the two of them had learned to rely on each other. They didn't speak much, but the silence between them was comfortable, even if it wasn't fully free of tension. They were still strangers in many ways, but there was a growing understanding between them. They had survived together, and that meant something. The soldier's eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of danger. They were far from the mercenaries now, but he knew they couldn't let their guard down. There were always more enemies out there, lurking in the shadows. The alien girl seemed to sense this as well. Her posture was still alert, her eyes flicking between the terrain and the soldier. She was no longer as tense as before, but she hadn't completely let her guard down either. They both knew that trust was a fragile thing, especially in a place like this. The soldier glanced over at her. She was beautiful, in a way that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Her features were sharp, her eyes glowing faintly in the fading light. Her alien markings were still visible, but now they seemed less like a warning and more like a part of who she was. She wasn't just a creature of war and destruction. She was a survivor, just like him. They shared that bond, and it was growing. Stronger with every passing hour. The girl's gaze met his, and for a brief moment, he felt something unspoken between them. There was still so much he didn't know about her, but he understood her in a way that few humans could. She had shown him a side of herself that was vulnerable, even if she didn't want to admit it. He didn't know what she was thinking, but he could tell that something was shifting inside her. He had healed her wounds, but there was more to it than that. She was beginning to see him as an ally, maybe even a friend. As the sun dipped lower, the temperature dropped, and the soldier knew they needed to find shelter before it got dark. The alien girl didn't need to be told. She had already started scanning the area, her senses keen. She didn't need words to communicate, her body language said it all. She was ready for whatever came next, but she was still aware of the dangers. Around them, the soldier felt the same way. They had survived the mercenaries, but the real challenge lay ahead. They had no idea what else was out there, but they couldn't afford to be complacent. He slowed his pace, scanning the rocky outcrops. Ahead, there was a narrow cave entrance up ahead. It wasn't much, but it would provide them with some protection for the night. The alien girl moved forward without hesitation, her movements fluid and controlled. She had already sensed the same thing, and she was prepared to take shelter. The soldier followed closely behind, keeping his weapon ready but not raising it just yet. He didn't want to risk spooking her. They were working together now, and he couldn't afford to break that trust. As they entered the cave, the soldier breathed a sigh of relief. The temperature inside was much colder, but it was safe. The walls were rough and jagged, but they offered some shelter from the wind. He checked his equipment, making sure everything was still in place. The alien girl had already settled into a corner, her eyes still watching him warily. She hadn't relaxed completely, but she hadn't attacked either. That was progress. They were beginning to trust each other more, even if it was slow and steady. The soldier sat down across from her, allowing himself to finally rest. He was exhausted, physically and emotionally, but he couldn't afford to let his guard down completely. The alien girl seemed content to stay where she was, her body still tense but no longer in a fighting stance. She was simply watching him, her sharp eyes flicking between him and the surroundings. He knew she wasn't sleeping. Neither of them could afford that luxury. They would need to stay alert. As the night wore on, the silence between them remained. It was strange but comfortable. The soldier found himself reflecting on everything that had happened, on how much had changed since the crash. He had gone from seeing the alien girl as a threat to seeing her as a partner in survival. She had proven herself in the heat of battle, and he had done the same. They had both made choices that had led them to this point. Neither of them had expected this. He certainly hadn't expected to find an ally in someone like her, but here they were, together in this cave, surviving. The alien girl's eyes met his again, and this time, there was something different in them. It wasn't just suspicion or wariness. There was something deeper there, something he couldn't quite name. She had fought beside him, and now she seemed to be waiting for something. He didn't know what, but he felt the weight of her gaze. It was as if she was trying to understand him, just as he was trying to understand her. The bond they shared had grown stronger, but there was still so much left unsaid. The soldier shifted slightly, adjusting his position. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. They couldn't survive alone. Together. They had made it this far, and they would have to keep going. The journey ahead was uncertain, but they would face it together. The alien girl wasn't just a survivor. She was a partner, and they would have to fight for their future, side by side. ***. The night passed in relative silence. the only sounds being the soft rustling of the alien girl's movements and the occasional shifting of rocks. The soldier remained alert, his mind replaying the events of the past few days. He had gone from simply trying to survive to forming a fragile but undeniable bond with the alien girl. The silence in the cave felt different now, no longer oppressive, but filled with an unspoken understanding. He was no longer just sharing space with her. They were partners in this struggle to stay alive. As dawn broke over the horizon, the soldiers' senses heightened. The cave, while providing temporary shelter, was not a permanent solution. They would have to keep moving. The alien girl stirred as the first light of day filtered into the cave. She stretched, her muscles tensing as she began to wake. The soldier watched her for a moment, noticing the way she moved with controlled power, her body still marked by the battle they had fought together. She was a warrior, and he had come to respect her strength and resilience. The soldier stood, stretching his own stiff muscles. He had not slept well, but that was to be expected. Sleep was a luxury in a world like this, especially when you didn't know what dangers might be lurking just beyond your reach. He gathered his gear, ensuring everything was still in place. The alien girl watched him, her gaze intense as always, but now there was something else in her eyes, something that hinted at a new kind of trust. It wasn't complete, but it was there. As the soldier moved toward the entrance of the cave, he could hear the distant sound of movement in the wind. It was faint, but unmistakable. Something was out there. The alien girl was already alert, her body tensing as she stood, her claws extending instinctively. The soldier didn't need to ask if she had heard it too. He could see the way her body was responding to the danger. They had both learned to be constantly on guard, and today was no different. They stepped out of the cave, the sunlight blinding after the darkness of the night. The landscape ahead was still the same, barren and desolate, with no signs of life for miles. But the soldier could feel the tension in the air. Something was off. The alien girl seemed to sense it too, her eyes darting around, her body moving with the fluid grace of a predator on the hunt. She was scanning the horizon, looking for any signs of movement. He did the same, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon, but he didn't draw it just yet. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the ground beneath them. The soldier's heart skipped a beat as the noise grew louder. It wasn't just the wind. It was something much more dangerous. The alien girl's eyes widened, her sharp senses telling her everything she needed to know. The soldier had no choice but to trust her now. He drew his weapon, his eyes focused on the approaching sound. Whatever was coming, it was coming fast. The ground shook again, this time more violently, and the soldier could see dust rising in the distance. He had no idea what it was, but he could tell that whatever was headed their way, it wasn't something they could fight head-on. The alien girl crouched, her body coiling like a spring, ready to unleash its fury. The soldier followed her lead, taking cover behind a large rock formation. They both waited in silence, watching the horizon for any sign of what was coming. As the rumble grew louder, the soldier's breath caught in his throat. A massive dark shape emerged from the dust cloud in the distance. It was enormous, a creature of unimaginable size and strength. The alien girl's eyes narrowed, and for the first time since he had met her, the soldier saw a flicker of fear in her expression. This was no ordinary threat. The creature was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Its massive form was covered in thick, armored scales, its eyes glowing a fierce red. The soldier's grip tightened on his weapon. He knew they had no chance against something like that in direct combat. The alien girl, however, had already begun to move. She was too fast for the soldier to keep up. She darted toward the creature, her claws flashing in the sunlight. The soldier hesitated for a moment, watching as the girl launched herself at the massive beast. He could see the way she moved, graceful, powerful, and deadly. She wasn't afraid. She was ready for battle. The soldier knew he couldn't let her face the creature alone. He took a deep breath and followed her, his weapon raised. They had fought together before, and they would fight together now. But this was different. This was a creature of unimaginable power, and they were both outmatched. The soldier had to be smart. He couldn't just charge in without a plan. The alien girl reached the creature first, her claws striking with incredible force. The creature roared, its massive body swaying as it swung its tail. The alien girl dodged, but the sheer force of the creature's movements knocked her off balance. She regained her footing quickly, her eyes flashing with determination. The soldier fired a shot at the creature, aiming for its weak spot, but the bullet seemed to do nothing. He realized quickly that this battle was not going to be won with brute force alone. He glanced at the alien girl, who was still fighting with everything she had. She had already proven herself. Now it was his turn. He had to be the one to figure out how to defeat this monster. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for each other. Together, they would find a way to win. Asterisk. The creature swung its massive tail again, this time aiming directly at the alien girl. She leaped sideways, narrowly avoiding the strike. The soldier watched in awe as she moved with such speed and precision. Her strength was undeniable, but even she seemed to struggle against the sheer size and power of the creature. The soldier knew they couldn't keep this up for long. They needed to end this fight quickly, or they would both be overwhelmed. He took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving the creature. He had to think, to act fast. He scanned the battlefield, looking for something, anything that could give them an advantage. The ground around them was littered with rocks and boulders, but none of them seemed useful against the monster. It was too big, too strong. The alien girl continued to dodge, her claws slashing against the creature's thick hide, but it was doing little more than irritating it. The soldier knew that this was not a battle they could win with force alone. They needed a plan. His eyes landed on a large rock formation a few yards away. It was high enough that it could give them a tactical advantage. He looked at the alien girl, hoping she would understand. She caught his gaze, her eyes narrowed in thought. There was no time for words. The battle was moving too fast. The soldier didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the rock formation, moving as quickly as he could. While the alien girl kept the creature distracted, the soldier reached the rocks and quickly scrambled up, his eyes scanning the area for any kind of weak spot in the creature. He had no idea where its vulnerability might lie, but he had to find it. As he climbed higher, he saw the creature rear back, its mouth opening wide as it prepared to strike. The alien girl, knowing the danger, lunged at the creature once more, her claws slashing through the air. The soldier fired a shot at the creature's exposed underbelly. This time he didn't miss. The shot landed with a satisfying thud, and the creature let out a deafening roar of pain. For a moment, the soldier thought they had done it, but the creature wasn't done yet. It swung its massive head, and the soldier felt the ground tremble beneath him as the beast charged toward the alien girl. She was too far away, too exposed. The soldier didn't think. He just acted. He leaped down from the rock formation, rolling as he hit the ground and getting back to his feet in a flash. He aimed his weapon at the creature's side and fired. Again, this time, the shot landed in a weaker spot, and the creature stumbled. The alien girl, seeing the opening, moved faster than ever before, her claws slashing across the creature's side. The creature roared again, but it was weakening. It thrashed in pain, its movements slower now, less coordinated. The soldier's heart raced as he looked over at the alien girl. She was still fighting with everything she had, but now it was clear that they were winning. The creature was struggling to maintain its strength, and it was only a matter of time before it collapsed. The soldier fired once more, aiming at the creature's head. The shot struck its skull, and the beast let out one final scream before collapsing to the ground with A massive thud. The alien girl stood over the fallen creature, her chest heaving, her claws still extended. She was covered in bruises and scratches, but she was standing. They had done it. The soldier approached slowly, his weapon lowered. The alien girl turned to face him, her eyes still glowing. But now there was a different look in them, one of respect, perhaps even gratitude. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. Her actions had already said everything. They had won, and they had done it together. The soldier smiled, a sense of relief flooding through him. He had never expected to find himself in this situation, fighting beside an alien for survival. But here they were. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light across the battlefield. The alien girl looked toward the horizon, her expression thoughtful. There was still much ahead of them, and the future was uncertain. But they had made it through the worst. The soldier knew that this wasn't the end of their journey. It was only the beginning. They had forged an unlikely partnership, one built on survival, trust, and respect. It was a bond that could not be easily broken. The soldier turned his gaze toward the alien girl, who was already moving toward the rocky outcrop. Ahead, she had once been a threat in his eyes, a fierce and dangerous creature, but now she was something more. She was an ally, a companion, and he had learned to respect her in ways he never thought possible. Together, they had defeated a creature that could have easily torn them apart. And now, as they walked away from the battle, side by side, Soldier knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They were no longer strangers. They were survivors. And that was enough.